How do West African gold explorers position themselves to survive? Watch this video and find out. Hello and welcome to our viewers on cruxinvestor.com, and for those of you new to Crux Investor, or if you haven't already done so, please click the button in the corner of the screen to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We talked today to Justin Tremain. He's the CEO of Exore Resources. They're an ASX listed gold explorer in West Africa. We talked to Justin today about strategy for explorers in the region, why cash is king, cheap drilling and grades, and the permitting process in Côte d'Ivoire. If you want to look at any of those topics specifically, go to the description below, click on the relevant timestamp, and that will take you to that part of the video. So let's find out what Justin had to say. Good morning, Justin. How are you?
Good, thanks, Matthew, and thanks for your time today.
No, pleasure. Nice to have you on board. Could you give us a 1-minute summary of the company, and then we get stuck into some questions after that?
Yeah, for sure. So Exore is a very new company in its current form. It's only been around for less than 1 year. And so we're a gold exploration company listed on the Australian Stock Exchange with a head office here in Perth in Australia. But our project and our sole focus is on a gold exploration project in Côte d'Ivoire, in the northern part of Côte d'Ivoire, which we acquired in really December last year. So we've been aggressively exploring that project over the last 7 to 8 months and had a lot of success as our drilling results have shown over the last 6 months.
Right. So you said you've been in the current form for less than a year. What was it before?
So really before, it was just a cash shell. Going back some time, it had some lithium assets, and that's where the cash came from. And then I joined the company. When I joined the company last year, it was just a well-funded cash vehicle without a project and looking for a project. We had about a $15 million market cap with $15 million in the bank.
Okay, got it. Okay, thanks for that. So Côte d'Ivoire, West Africa, well-known gold producing area, lots of companies in the area. I assume that's why you decided to go there. How did you get into the project? How did you find it?
Yeah, it was really the project that attracted us first and foremost. When it was a project that I was familiar with. When we looked at the project, we could see that there'd been a lot of early reconnaissance exploration work done by the previous explorer, but not a lot of drilling. And there was some really stellar walk-up drill targets. And obviously we had the money to be able to do the project justice. And then when we looked at the country, we really saw a huge opportunity in Côte d'Ivoire. It really is the most stable place in West Africa now. And there's long been an argument that it's got the greatest opportunity because it has a very large percentage of the Birimian Greenstone Belts that are situated in Côte d'Ivoire, but it just hasn't had the same exploration focus as some of the neighbouring countries. Yet it is now, over the last 5 to 6 years, the most stable country. So it was really a project that got us there interested first, but then when we looked at the country, we could really see a lot of activity and a lot of interest building in Côte d'Ivoire over the next couple of years.
I noticed a very interesting chart at the back of your PowerPoint, ranking for terrorist activity, and I think Côte d'Ivoire is actually below the UK and the US, which I thought was quite amusing. So very safe.
It's a very topical issue for West Africa. I mean, really for the world, but in West Africa, in some of the northern countries, it's becoming a major issue, and it becomes very difficult to undertake exploration when you have those security issues.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Côte d'Ivoire, did have one incident a number of years ago, but it hasn't had any recent incidents whatsoever.
Yeah, it's a fair point. I guess you get that question a lot with regards to safety, etc. And I think there are some countries slightly further north of you that perhaps do have that consideration. Côte d'Ivoire, great country, I've worked there, nice people as well. So if we look at the Birimian Greenstone, it is prolific, as you say. I think even in your PowerPoint, you say there's 61 million ounce plus businesses there already. That's right. So it is prolific. But isn't that part of the problem? It's very attractive, but isn't that part of your problem too, in that you're one of many gold explorers in the region, and you're trying to stand out. So, well, do you agree that's a problem? And if so, what are you doing about it?
Yeah, I don't really see it as a problem. At the end of the day, large gold discoveries are going to get interest from the market and where you are. The issue is getting a land position in the country, because all of West Africa is highly sought after. But the ground that we've managed to put our foot on, it's very difficult to get a position like that. So we have over 1,000 square kilometres under tenure now. And we're very fortunate that the exploration company prior to us spent 4 years in putting together that package, and spent 4 years before they could get on the ground and do any exploration, which obviously becomes a very frustrating and also costly period. And our work was done. We're able to step in and get started straight away with our exploration. So the challenge there is more just getting a ground position. And we were able to do that in one transaction.
That's a factor of getting land and being able to do mining. But I guess your team also needs to worry about financing, share price, and all of that sort of stuff. You've got a lot of cash in the bank, I get it, and we'll come on to that in a second, because I think that's a plus point. But in terms of promoting the company, is it not a concern of yours that you've got lots of people going around telling pretty much the same story, and they're sitting with resource as well?
Yeah, for us, it's all about just adding value to the project and undertaking exploration in a very financially prudent and efficient manner. And then drilling results, as we've been able to put out over the last 6 months, will ultimately attract the attention of investors. And obviously, as an exploration company, you are beholden to your share price. You do need to raise further funds at some point in the future. And therefore, it's important to be able to set yourself apart. But ultimately, that's just in drilling results, and then being able to define resources. As I said, I think new discoveries, which we think we're on to 2 such new discoveries, are always going to generate quite a lot of excitement.
You do have to do those things, but there's a bunch of other companies doing exactly the same thing, and they're going to be going back to the ASX or AIM and reporting the same story as you. So how do you stand out? What is the plan going forward? I know you're early stages, but I'm just interested in your thinking, why you got into this.
No, it's a good question.
Yeah.
And it's what actually got me interested in Exore as a company before we had a project was its cash position. I mean, most junior exploration companies don't have the benefit of having $15 million in the bank that they can put to work, and therefore really are beholden to exploration results and market conditions over the next 6 months, whereas we're able to not worry about that, well funded, not having to worry about raising any capital in the future, and able to go about our business.
Let's talk about the cash position, because I think that the 2 things that in your favour, I think, are Aussie gold price, nice at the moment, very nice, all-time high, I think.
Yeah, all-time high. I mean, really, it's the US gold price that is generating interest for us, because we're in a sort of US dollar environment in Côte d'Ivoire.
Okay, understood. And so cash, you've got, what, 10 million bucks or so?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, just under $10 million now, because we're doing very active exploration programs.
So how are you going to spend that? When does that last you through to? And what value do you think it can create? You're sitting at 30 million-ish market cap today. You're going to spend 10 million. What do you want to see at the end of that?
Yeah, well, what got us interested in this project is we wouldn't be here if we didn't see the potential for a multi-million ounce gold project ultimately. Mm-hmm. And for us, that's 2-3 million ounces plus, which is a standalone project which you could then take through to feasibility and ultimately development and production. So that's our goal. Where we sit today, it's been 6 months. We've spent probably about $5 million. Hopefully, we'll come out with a maiden resource in the next few weeks. And that should be a stepping stone towards that ultimate goal of a 2-3 million ounce project. And we've been able to, and I think it'll be quite a significant stepping stone towards there. And we've been able to achieve that with about $5 million of expenditure. And so hopefully we can continue to grow that maiden resource from going forward over the next 12 months. And then when we next come back to the market, it'll be based on a project that has a much more substantial, has a resource firstly, and a much more substantial resource than what we'll be putting out in the next few weeks. and far more advanced project.
Right. So Maiden Resource, that's good. And so you're expecting what sort of level?
Oh, it's difficult to say until we put it out as an announcement. But I think for us to see it as a material milestone, we'd be really looking at as an initial position of 400,000 or 500,000 ounces of gold. And that's, to us, would be a pretty significant milestone to achieve in just 6 months of exploration.
And why did you feel the need to put out a Maiden Resource now? Shouldn't you just be drilling and put out a meaningful Maiden Resource, 1 million ounce plus, that sort of level? You've got the cash. You're not under any pressure. Yeah. Why do it?
Yeah, once again, that's a very good question, and something of much debate. I guess the analysts out there, we are an exploration company. So coming back to what you were touching on before, what sets us apart is we want to be able to show that we've achieved something tangible in the first 6 months, rather than just a whole lot of drilling results, and be able to say, what does this mean? And that sort of leads us to putting a maiden resource out, albeit it's just very much an interim position. And then it allows the analysts to say, well, they've actually achieved what they said they were going to do in the first 6 months, and gives everyone a bit more confidence in what we'll do in the next 6 months.
It's it's a very sort of conventional response to mining, is to do it the way that you've done it, and so there's nothing wrong with it because it's conventional. But if you look at companies like Great Bear in Canada, they're just drilling. There's no resource being put out because they're hitting the grades. They're drilling. And the analysts understand that. So
yep.
That's another strategy. I'm just again coming back to the thinking of the management team.
I think it's a slightly different model for TSX listed companies versus ASX listed companies. TSX listed companies just like to drill until they have a very substantial resource as a maiden resource, whereas ASX companies tend to try and show a little bit more progression as the project moves forward.
Okay.
And then, really, for us, we started out as a cash shell with just no institutional shareholders, no analysts following. And I think just putting a resource out allows us to attract some more institutions, and we've been able to do over the last 6 months, but hopefully attract further institutions to our register on the back of also some analysts picking up coverage of the company going forward.
Right. Okay. So again, this fascinates me. You've got all this cash, so you've got all the optionality. You can decide how you're going to spend it, or how quickly you're going to spend it, how many drills you've got running at the same time. But you're conscious of the share price. You're at, what are you, 7 cents, something like that? What do you?
We're trading around probably 8 cents.
8 cents, right?
Today, 8 to 8.5 cents. I wouldn't say we're too conscious about the share price over the next 6 months.
Right.
But, we are conscious of where the share price may be in a year's time. And, the share price, it doesn't happen overnight. So getting exposure, it doesn't happen overnight. It's a gradual process.
Right, but it's something that you're conscious of. You need to be speaking to institutions and retail. You've got about 50% retail following, mostly Oz, I guess.
Yeah, look, I think all exploration companies are conscious of the share price because it is ultimately the way they fund the company going forward. And, the most critical thing for an exploration company is to try and minimise dilution for its shareholders going forward. And therefore, the share price is always a critical thing for all junior exploration companies.
Right. So, and I'll just finish off on this point, for this section, which is how are you differentiating yourself with your story to those analysts who've seen, there's a lot of gold stories out there. There's a lot of West African gold stories out there. You're an explorer, high risk stage of development, but you're saying, okay, how are you differentiating yourselves when you're sitting in front of these guys? What are you saying?
Well, there's two things really that differentiate ourselves. One's our cash position, and therefore, people who invest in Exore today, are unlikely to be facing dilution in the short term. So that's the first point. And then secondly, and ultimately the most important, is the drilling results that we've been able to put out, which shows that we've made definitely a discovery at what we call the Antoinette, area, and looks like we're making a second discovery, an emerging discovery at Birimian. And that really differentiates us. And the grade of those intercepts, and ultimately that will come out in our Maiden Resource. We think we'll be able to show, whilst it's a modest start in terms of quantum, it should be at pretty good grade for a resource which is sitting at surface.
Right, okay. And again, if I'm looking at sort of comps, look at Cardinal next door, Ghana, they're sitting at 5 million plus ounces, heading towards 7, market cap 130 million. They've been drilling, but they haven't got the response in the market that they had hoped for. So, I mean, are you nervous about the current strategy delivering for you, or you have some degree of confidence, and where does that come from?
I know we have a lot of confidence, because what we're talking about as an initial step is just on one very small area at Antoinette, and we've been drilling elsewhere, both step out on that particular area that we're looking at putting a maiden resource around within the broader Antoinette area, but also at this new discovery, Birimian, which will not feature in any maiden resource, but in some point in the future, we hope that will provide a very much a step change to the project in terms of scale.
You've got all the licenses and permits that you currently need to be doing this drilling, and you are drilling without any interference or obstruction.
Correct. Actually, it's a very important point. So obviously tenure is always topical in a developing country and in Africa. And so as part of the acquisition of this project at the end of last year, one of the critical conditions was the renewal, firstly the government approving the transaction, which they did, but also renewing the permits, which happened at the beginning of December, and that was really the final condition to the application. So in Côte d'Ivoire, we have our permits renewed as part of the mining code, in accordance with the mining code, for 3 years, and then we have the right to renew those for a further 2 periods, subject obviously to meeting our work commitments. But given the amount of drilling that we've been doing over the last 6 months, there's no question of meeting our work commitments.
Okay, so, and you're obviously, that region is not, you're hitting similar grades to lots of companies in that Birimian Greenstone Belt, so that's good. They're good grades. Your focus going forward, I guess, is about understanding how much of it you've got, right? Because at the moment, you don't quite know.
That's
what
right.
you've got.
I mean, I think the grades we're hitting, are at the upper end of some of the other operating gold mines and just deposits around us. So I think the grade is reasonably good, reasonably high grade for surface mineralisation. But you're absolutely right. It's all about how much gold we can define, and the scale of the soil anomalies that we're drilling definitely demonstrate that potential for that multi-million ounce discovery. And the area that we've been drilling at Antoinette, it represents probably only 10 to 15% of the broader soil anomaly within that area there. And then, as I said, we have a number of other very large-scale soil anomalies, only one of which we've started to drill and having some early success there.
So let me just understand it better. Okay, so you've got you've started a process. You've got a land package. You've got the licenses, permits. The grades are, I say the upper end. I'd agree with you. The upper end of the Birimian type numbers, usual numbers. But where's this thing going? Once you've kind of built out some scale to it, where's the exit point for you guys? Because all the mid-tier or the big boys are looking out for ounces in the ground. They definitely are, and you must be conscious of that. So what are you doing about it? How do you, again, stand out from the 60 other explorers, developers in that region?
Well, what are we doing about it? I mean, really, my view is you take the project forward. We're at the stage of exploration, which I think is really where the value is created, is discovering and defining a resource. But once we have the critical mass, and which I said, in my view, is 2 to 3 million ounces of gold in resource, then we will, the company will evolve, the team will evolve, and we'll take that resource and project through feasibility and ultimately development. that's where we'll go. Now, if there's interest along the way, so be it. But if we're not taking the project forward and adding value to the project, then we're not going to attract any interest in the future. So that will be our strategy. But also the area that we're operating in, it's there is 2 existing operations in close proximity to us already, which have reasonably limited mine life as well. Which, when we looked at this project, was always a little bit of a not our strategy, but a fallback position. Is that there is 2 operating mills in close proximity, which in the next couple of years we'll probably need additional mill feed.
Okay, and from what perspective? Go and buy those mills, or just offer feedstock?
Oh, it'd be way too early to tell at this stage. I mean, as I said, that's very much a fallback position for us. Our current strategy is to go it alone and discover a resource that has the economies of scale to develop on it as a standalone project.
Have you seen any examples of companies being taken out with 2 or 3 million ounces? Is that a normal scenario in West Africa?
There's a lot of cases in West Africa of companies getting to that 2 or 3 million ounces and then being taken out. There's no question about that. I mean, there was a recent transaction within Côte d'Ivoire, only in the last few months ago. It was only a 500,000 ounce resource, not a company, but a project held by a bigger company, Newcrest, 500,000 ounces, which Roxgold came and bought that. So that's an example of a transaction. I think that paid some $20 million US with another $10 million US to come for 500,000 ounce resource. So you can put that sort of as a benchmark against Exore.
That's a good one. Yeah, I think there's a lot of data that came with that project as well. So that's a fair point. So let's talk about the management team then. Track record, experience in the region, and of creating shareholder value, i.e. making people money. Tell us a bit about the team.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so the company's chaired by a gentleman by the name of John Fitzgerald. So he's a very well-known mining financier here in Australia. It sits on the board of Northern Star, which is obviously probably the most successful gold company in Australia over the last 10 years. Hugely successful. So he's been involved with Northern Star really since its inception. Then myself, I joined the company 12 months ago, really with the mandate to secure a project for the company that we put our money to work on, a project that offered a lot of upside in terms of exploration potential. I think we've managed to do that. Prior to joining Exore, I founded and ran a company that defined and completed a feasibility study on the first gold mining project in Cambodia, so another developing jurisdiction, which that company got taken over in 2016, and that company is now taking that project through development as we speak. And I remained with that for 12 months before coming across into Exore. And then on ground, we have a exploration manager who is highly experienced in West Africa, spent the last 12 years just purely in West Africa on gold projects, and has been involved in 2 quite significant gold discoveries in Burkina Faso, and also had some exposure in Côte d'Ivoire, but definitely saw the potential of our projects, and that's why he came to join us as our on-ground sort of exploration manager.
Right. Okay. And what's the shareholding structure look like? I know there's a big retail component to this, but how much of the management sitting? How much are they sitting on?
Yeah, on a diluted basis, it's just under 10% of the company is the management sitting on.
Right.
And a lot of that's just been actual shares bought on market.
Okay. And any significant shareholders or significant parties that we should be aware of?
As touched on before, as a cash shell, obviously we had no institutions on our register, December last year. Now we have a number of institutions on our register, which, our drilling results has attracted that interest, and that's sort of set us apart from these other companies that you refer, and we've been able to attract these institutions on our register in a market that's reasonably challenging still for exploration. And so one of those is a North American institution that's gone substantial, so that's public, so that's a very active gold fund that now owns, I think over 6% of the company. And then we have a number of Australian institutions sitting below that 5% disclosure threshold.
Okay, and do you think the market's giving you fair value at 30 million bucks for what you have?
I don't think too many managing directors would think that. But look, as I said before, there's a reasonably recent corporate transaction where hard cash has been paid, for fairly modest sized resource of, I think it was sort of 430,000 ounces at the time, which is, was transacted at a higher than our current enterprise value. But ultimately, we're well funded, so the share price is what it is. We'll just keep going and hopefully keep stepping out and keep producing the drilling results that we've been putting out over the last 6 months and show this project's going to grow and grow. And ultimately, the share price, I think, will react accordingly.
Okay, so let's get stuck into the projects themselves. I mean, again, without going through each graph in gruesome detail, if you can give us the highlights. I think you've got 4 projects where there's a great chart on page 16 of your most recent presentation, I think, which people can go to, and we'll put it up on the video as well. You're talking about Antoinette, Veronique, Liberty, and Project Wide. So they're all at different stages, and you've got to allocate your 10 million bucks somehow. So where's it mostly being focused and directed?
Well, really, we have 2 permit areas, which the northern one we call Birimian project, and then the southern one, the Liberty project. And whilst we call them different project names, they're actually only about 35 kilometres apart. So if we define resources, depending on the grade, obviously, on either of those projects, they're definitely complementary to each other. But our focus, 90% of our focus, has been on the Birimian project, which within that sits the Antoinette prospect and discovery, and also the about 12 kilometres to the south, the Veronique new emerging gold discovery. So that's definitely our focus, and both those areas are quite large. They're about 7 to 8 kilometres by 3 or 4 kilometres in width, and we've really just touched the tip of the iceberg on both of those areas.
And these are relatively shallow deposits as well. Is that right?
Yeah. Everything we're drilling is, open pittable resources is what we're targeting. So really in the top 150 metres, everything is, mineralisation is outcropping at surface there. And I mean, our priority is actually drilling the top 100 metres, which is predominantly weathered oxide material, which has obviously metallurgical and mining benefits. And that is actually one of the advantages of this part of the world, northern Côte d'Ivoire, is the weathering is very, very deep. So we're typically talking about 60 or 70 metres of weathering, which is very deep.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point for people to understand about the gold in this region and the Birimian is it does make it easier and cheaper to mine. So you'd be expecting reasonably good ASIC numbers when you get to that point of understanding it. But there are 60 other explorers and developers there who we can use some of their data to extrapolate from. But I think it's an important point for people to understand about the cost of mining and drilling in that region.
Yeah, and I would say about Côte d'Ivoire as well, which was very surprising, is the infrastructure is very good, which then has some advantages, particularly in capital costs.
Yep.
So, we're no more than 30 kilometres off sealed road, very good sealed road. There's high voltage power lines, throughout northern Côte d'Ivoire, and probably no further than 30 kilometres from a high voltage power line. So these will have some cost advantages as well. And then the ground is all very open ground, and the topography is very flat. So all these have significant advantages when we get to that point. But ultimately, grade is king, and I think what we're defining is a pretty good grade when we compare ourselves to some other deposits in the region.
I think that's fair to say. Justin, thank you very much for your time today. That's been a wonderful introduction to Exore. Very, very interesting indeed. It's a fantastic part of the world. I think it's easy mining. It's good people. I say good infrastructure. We look forward to hearing more from you as things develop.
Well, excellent, and thanks for your time today. And look forward to chatting further in the future.
Thanks very much for watching. We hope you enjoyed that. And if you did, please click the button in the corner of the screen to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also catch us on our website, cruxinvestor.com, and Cruxcast, our podcast series. Plus, most days you can catch us on LinkedIn and Twitter. We'd love getting your feedback, so please keep that coming, and we'll speak to you again soon.